do some introductions. I'm David Barrow, the Director of Industry Relations with the ARA. And also with us today, we have a number of other individuals. We have Ibrahim out of our finance department, the Director of Finance with the ARA. And then we have gentlemen representing the Dyand systems. And I'm going to introduce them, although I don't have a heavy introduction for Cam Basil. And as you see, we are having technology issues. The gentleman on the bottom of your screen, I'm hoping, the gentleman with the tan, let's call him that. This is Cam Basil, who is the CEO of Dyand. And he comes direct from having worked with Apple, including operations in China. And I think there's more that he can elaborate on that in regards to that position. And then also with him is Alexander Sugden, and Alex is Dyand's newly appointed Chief Revenue Officer. And his primary responsibility is overseeing new client partnership opportunities. And he's got a deep passion for talking to clients about their business and presenting them with the best possible technology solutions. So I'm going to be in the background of this session today collecting questions. So if you have issues or concerns, you can use the chat or the Q&A areas. I'll be capturing that information and sharing it forward. And I want to just start off with a bit of a disclaimer. So again, the ARA, we want to emphasize that we take cybersecurity very seriously. Our intent today is to raise the profile around cybersecurity protection, and the options presented by Dyand are for industry consideration. As always, industry is free to determine the course of action appropriate to you and your needs. And today we have Dyand Systems who are going to talk about this important subject. And Dyand, just so you know, is currently our support system that we use by the ARA, and they're also the preferred supplier to industry, and they offer a 20% off managed IT services to ARA members. So something for consideration. So we hope you find today's session of value. And again, we're recording this process and we will then be posting it on the ARA site at a later time. So bear with me. I'm just going to hide a couple of individuals and we'll turn it over to Cam and Alexander. So...
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dave, for that warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm the CEO here at Dyand Systems and joined by Alex, our CRO at Dyand. And as ARA members ourselves, that's a privilege to be here to share some knowledge with you all today related to, of course, the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity. So as David mentioned, I spent quite a bit of time with Apple, and although my time overseas was many, many, many years ago, the state of the world is in a very different place today. But that's a story for another time. Today we'll focus on all things cybersecurity, and I'll briefly hand it over to Alex to do a quick intro before we get started.
Hi guys, thanks for joining. I see we've got 15 people on the call, which is not bad at all for a busy Tuesday afternoon. So we do appreciate people taking the time. As CRO here, I'm principally in charge of Dyand's new partnership opportunities. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me if anything we're about to present chimes a chord with you. Absolutely be delighted to have a quick initial conversation and see how we can help you out, whether that's cybersecurity or broader IT.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alex. So of course, as Dave mentioned, we are an IT service provider. Just a quick note on that. We're based out of Vancouver, BC. Of course, we've been serving the community here since 2001. That's really on all matters IT. And again, we've been effectively acting as the IT department for businesses of all sizes. And of course, outside of our fancy titles and roles, Alex and I have, of course, had to level up our knowledge on all matters cybersecurity, and that goes for our entire organization. So our goal really today is to hopefully have you all walk away with a little bit more information, be a little bit more informed on what you can do today and what are the threats that matter to Canadian businesses that we should consider and prepare for. So with that said, let's get started. And we'll cover kind of 3 areas that we'll focus on today. What you'll see first, what you'll hear about first, is really understanding what cyber threats are, what's happening in the space, and specifically in Canada, what we've observed across the clients that we support across the different industries in Canada, what you can do to protect your organization, steps that you can take, as well as how Dyand can participate. What can we do if there's something that stands out to you that is a challenge you face today? Then we can certainly help identify areas where we can work together. If you're here today representing your own business or an organization, again, hopefully you'll learn something to take back to your team, to your executive folks, with, again, some actionable next steps. And again, for those who are staying till the end, we will draw a random winner as a token of our appreciation for your time today. We initially thought that we would, Alex and I had an interesting conversation around what should we award? Should this be an Amazon gift card or something else? And in light of things that are happening, we'll keep it in Canada. Nothing beats cold hard cash. So please stay till the end. If your name is mentioned, we'll draw out a number. And then, of course, if you are that person, please make sure you send us your email information so that we can coordinate. And thank you for your time today. All right, with that said, let's get started. You now know who we are, so we'll keep moving here. I'll really start with this. The story here is what happened last year. I think, of course, we as a managed IT service provider have been thinking about and talking about cybersecurity for many years now. What received extensive media attention and coverage and resulting in an emergency act was what happened with London Drugs. This was close to home. And of course, by a show of hands, if you're aware of this, if you were affected by it, feel free to throw your hand up or put something in the comments. I'm certainly aware of many folks who tried to get into London Drugs only to find that all 79 of the stores had been closed across Western Canada, and that was for a week. So let's talk about what happened here. This was an organized attack by a group that identified themselves as Lockbit Ransomware Group. So again, this is a targeted attack against a Canadian business. And unfortunately, what happened was due to, again, security measures not being where they needed to be, this ransomware group was able to infiltrate their corporate network, and they were able to extract some sensitive files. Unfortunately, these files were employee medical records, HR records, and of course, what we expected happened, which is there was a ransomware demand, 25 million in this case, if they want their data back. And of course, this was not paid. And the result was, again, the data that was stolen was leaked onto the dark web. So again, unfortunately, huge impacts here to not only the reputational damage, there's obviously financial loss, and think about the disruptions to operations. How many Canadians, how many folks had to go somewhere else for the things that they needed to get, for the things they needed to purchase. And in many cases, some of these were prescriptions. So you can imagine the impact to Canadians who connect with London Drugs, who are customers of London Drugs. So again, I'm sure a very stressful time for them when this hit. The one that's a little bit more relevant for most folks that will be on this call is what happened with CDK. Now, some of you may be familiar with this. This is the software provider that provides a lot of back-end systems to car dealerships across North America. In fact, they've got about 15,000 car dealerships that use the software across North America. Very similarly, they were hit with a ransomware attack. Again, their group identified who they were that targeted CDK. And this attack, unfortunately, shut down these systems, which disrupted things from vehicle sales to financing to even service. In fact, several of our customers were trying to get their vehicles serviced that day. And when we started speaking about this, it wasn't until then when they connected the dot that I couldn't actually get my car serviced, or I couldn't pay for the service because everything was shut down. So again, causing some panic, some havoc, and obviously severe disruptions to operations. And unfortunately, in this case, again, personal information was leaked. Names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's licenses, and financial information. Unfortunately, once systems were restored and things seemed normal, the attackers, again, targeted them one more time after the systems were restored. And it's because the underlying security issues were not dealt with. So with that said, we'll move on here and talk about small, medium businesses. You might look at some of those organizations and say, well, they're large-scale enterprises or they're nationwide chains. Why would I, as a small or medium business, be concerned here? In fact, I would say that small, medium businesses are a bigger target than large enterprises, large-scale chains. And the reason for that is a lack of resources. This is prime targets, prime space for these cyber criminals, because most businesses that are of this size and scale don't actually have a dedicated cybersecurity budget. And that makes them very vulnerable to these attacks. What that results in is a lack of preparedness. In fact, 43% of attacks are actually aimed at small, medium businesses, and only 14% of these businesses are actually prepared to defend themselves. And so certainly many of the customers we support fall into small, medium businesses. And we've seen firsthand what some of these threats could look like, where they come from, and we'll touch on that later on. So again, really what I'm hoping for everyone to extract out of this today is that, again, we are all a target, whether it's through our personal email or our professional email. And we'll get into the different attack methods that cyber criminals use. So we'll move on to the next slide here and talk about what the cost of cybercrime is. Some of you would have seen and realized this when talking about the London drugs and the CDK examples. But again, just touching on the financial loss, the legal impact and implications, the reputational damage that business faces, and then obviously the disruption to operations. The unfortunate thing is most small businesses, if they're hit with a substantial attack, because of the costs, not only to the operations of the business being disrupted, but the time and money you have to spend to have someone come in to restore your environment, to ensure there are no backdoors left by these criminals. Most businesses don't survive and can only last about 6 months. So again, the urgency to act and be proactive is really what we're trying to communicate here. I do want to touch on what a cyber threat is, just so we all have the same sort of base level understanding of what these are and ultimately where they come from. So think of cyber threats as digital burglars. These are scammers, these are vandals, and really what they're trying to do is they're trying to steal your stuff. When we say stuff, we're talking about passwords, banking information, personal or corporate data. The second thing they want to do is they want to trick you into giving them access through phishing emails, through clicking links, access to your login credentials, your Microsoft account, your email. It could be anything, just a way in. And then, of course, number 3, they want to break into your systems. Where is all of the financial data stored? Really getting a lay of the land, who has the keys to the kingdom. Again, we'll touch on that a little bit later on how these cyber criminals move throughout your systems and how long they actually sit there. The analogy that Alex and I like to use often is imagining your digital life as your home. These cyber threats are essentially criminals trying to sneak in through the windows, trying to pick locks or trick you into opening a door. I find that helpful analogy works well to articulate this, again, what cyber threats are. And again, I think we're all clear by now why this should worry us. It's money, time, and trust that get impacted. And experience has shown us that it can take folks who do the remediation and recovery work anywhere from 50 to 60 hours just to recover data, just to recover the environment and ensure that there are no backdoors left open for a cyber criminal to get back in. And really 50 to 60 hours, I mean, again, it's subjective. You could look at that and say, that doesn't feel like a lot of time. Others might look at that and say, it seems like a very lengthy amount of time to spend. The way that I would look at this is, can your business afford to be down 50 to 60 hours? And then in terms of cost, what does 50 and 60 hours actually mean? And so you can start to compute this in your head that there's a serious financial impact here should something happen. So how do these cyber criminals get in? Interestingly enough, 91% of all phishing or all cyber threats come through phishing. These are emails. So again, I think all of us can probably attest to this, that we've received one of these strange, funny, deceptive emails. They're made to look legitimate. They're made to either have you click on a link to reset your password, or they're framed as an urgent request. And in some cases, in fact, I've seen these personally myself, is an invoice request or a request to pay an invoice. And so the challenge here, and what I would caution you all to do, is not click on any links or open any attachments. A lot of these attachments can actually be infected. So again, the second that you click, the second that you open something, although it won't be immediately visible to you, the toolkits or the software that the hacker uses will start to install itself. And that'll start the cyber criminal timeline from when they start to infiltrate your environment, your account, to when they finally lock you out of your data, out of your environment. And this is where they start to steal credentials. So again, we'll touch more into that timeline. The second area is the network or your digital identity. So again, when you are using a weak password, or if and when passwords are stolen, when you're delaying that software update that you see on your phone or your PC and you say, I'll get back to this later. I don't want to wait for this thing to install for the next 15, 20 minutes. Our suggestion is to ensure that you always update software. More often than not, they do include security patches. And so again, when there's that vulnerability, someone will come in and start to hop from system to system. Again, they're trying to get a lay of the land. And the last area that a cyber criminal will try to infiltrate your business is the endpoint, the physical device. These are laptops, desktop servers. And again, if they're outdated, whether it's software or the hardware, then again, that poses a vulnerability. That's a way for a threat actor or cyber criminal to get in. And the last thing I'll touch on here for everyone on the call is that, a significant number of these cyber criminals are part of organized crime groups. And unfortunately, based on where they're located in the jurisdiction that they operate in, they're allowed to continue doing what they're doing. So, unfortunately, based on that, I don't think we're going to see things slowing down. Because email is one of those attack vectors or methods that's commonly used, just want to touch on this a little bit more. One of the trends that we're seeing is your trusted contacts being compromised. So if, let's say, you are the target and the intended, place for the cyber criminal to go, what they will try to do is compromise someone that a client, a supplier, and target you from there. So again, what we're seeing right now is the trend is a legitimate email comes from a legitimate person asking for financial information or asking to click a link. And so we'll go over the rule of thumb shortly, but I do want to just quickly touch on it now. And that is, if it's unexpected, you should definitely use caution. And if it's something that seems strange or off, and it wasn't something you were expecting. And unfortunately, this false invoice scheme has seen several businesses across Canada send money, transfer money, thinking that it's a legitimate email from a vendor we know, from a supplier we know, only to realize that, again, there was no other invoice. There was no other outstanding balance to pay. So again, the false invoice scheme is a quick and easy way for someone to receive money, to steal money. Outside of that, the main things that they'll try to do is compromise the account and try to get in and start working their way to the person who's got the keys to the kingdom. So again, I do want to caution everybody on these phishing emails. And again, if you're not expecting it, then you should question it. I did throw in some examples here. I know that Dave and team will send this deck out to all of you later, so I won't touch on this a whole lot. This is just an example of a phishing email. Again, typically what I do is when I see something like this, I always look at who is sending me the email. So of course we know that Spotify, well, the domain is spotify.com, not Spotify recruiters. And so there's things that you can start to spot in these emails that should tell you that this is not a legitimate email, especially if you're not expecting it. But unfortunately, career opportunities is another avenue that these cyber criminals are using to target folks. And then the classic bank sending an email. Banks don't send you these kinds of emails. Certainly not Capital One, and certainly not from work@secure.net. So again, some things you can look at to immediately spot issues with again these phishing attempts. This is going to be a little bit techy. So what I ultimately want everyone to get out of this is this hacker or cyber criminal timeline. Typically, when a business is hit and they're taken down, so in the case of London Drugs or CDK, the threat actor or the cyber criminal that would have taken them down would have already been in their systems for at least 90 days. This is typically the process that they follow. There's some strategic planning that's done on who to target, the methods they're going to use to target. And then, of course, they decide at that point, is there an individual that we can compromise, or do we want to spearfish someone? Spearfishing is when someone makes it personable. They use your name. They might reference things that you would know or that you're familiar with. Again, that as you put your guard down. Once they have deployed their hacker tools or the software they're going to use to infiltrate your environment, that's when enumeration begins. It's the, all right, who have I impersonated? Who have I breached? Where am I? Where do I need to go? Is there a server? Is there client info? There are financial records. And that's when the lateral spread starts to happen. And in this case, this is what happened. And in both the examples we shared earlier, where unfortunately data was stolen. And again, in some cases, then goal might be just to completely lock you out of your systems until you pay. I won't touch on MDR at the moment. The bottom, what you're seeing here is there are obviously solutions that we offer all of our clients, and that allows us to proactively look at when these intrusions happen within seconds to stop this from occurring, so that we can avoid everything that happens step 2 onward. But again, I really want to just focus on education. We'll touch on this later. This is what the cyber criminal will follow. There was a time when franchisees were pizza shops and McDonald's franchises. Unfortunately, now what we're seeing is there's actually franchisee models for cybercrime, where the head organization will take 20%, and they'll give you all the tools, the know-how, as well as the steps to follow. So again, it's a little bit shocking that this is a model now that has made its way into the cybercriminal organizations. So again, I'll be very brief on this slide here. I think there's really 5 things that we want to do whenever we try to combat a cyber incident or a threat actor trying to get in. We really want to try to know what all the assets are. These are all the devices that are in use, what's active, what's inactive, have things just been left on a shelf that could be vulnerable, knowing what these risks are, and then putting measures in place to protect ourselves, blocking people from making mistakes, educating staff on what to look for, and then having something in place to block the bad actors from getting in. And then again, something to detect all this and respond to it, so that again, we don't have any disruption to operations. There's obviously several gaps throughout this that have to be considered, but we'll touch on what things you can start to think about on your own to better protect yourself. And so we've come up with a bit of a list here on things that you can do. And so what we would suggest everyone start to seriously consider is, obviously there's some sort of human or software-based proactive monitoring. Again, know your assets, know what's in use. If something shouldn't be used, why is it still connected to your network? Why are there still accounts on it? Make sure it's decommissioned, make sure it's reset, restarted. Multi-factor authentication, a lot of folks avoid this or they skip this. We say always use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. And again, that's validating you are who you are through another device. Some of this is text-based, some of it is through email. And definitely delete and report phishing emails. Do not click or respond. And always approach unexpected emails with caution, even if it's a trusted contact. When in doubt, just give them a shout. Pick up the phone and call someone if it's unexpected, and you'll know right away whether it came from the right person. Security awareness training for your staff. There are resources online. Some of them are free. And then, of course, some of them are more robust as paid services. Again, getting your team trained and educated is an easy place to prevent someone from clicking or taking action in an email. And again, we touched on this earlier, always updating your software on PCs and business applications, especially when those updates become available. What many folks also don't know is if you have an office, a physical space, ensuring that you have a firewall that's not outdated, that isn't considered end of life, that's still receiving software updates from the vendor. So the second that stops, that's a vulnerability that a cyber criminal can exploit. So again, very important to have a firewall securing your network if you do have a shop or an office space or a showroom. This one seems obvious, but many people don't do it. Change your passwords frequently and use a password manager so that, again, you're not using your pet's name or the city that you were born in or your childhood best friend's name. Again, those kind of standard suggestions or those go-tos that we might all be familiar with over the years. We're well past that now. We need to have more complex passwords. And then if you do store physical or even electronic records, whether it's internal records, it's client records, ensure that these are stored securely and that the access to this is only given to those who need it. So a good rule of thumb here is deny access unless someone really needs it, and then give them that access. And it's really important for everyone to also consider cyber insurance policy. We're a Canadian business ourselves. So of course, we have to have, as you can imagine, as a managed service provider, a fairly robust cyber insurance policy. This day and age, any business operating in Canada should work with your insurance purveyor to ensure that you have adequate coverage. So what's our mission at Dyand? As far as security is concerned, our goal is always for our clients to provide 24/7 monitoring. These incidents can happen at any time. Cyber criminals don't wait until business hours, your business hours, our business hours to strike. So we have to make sure that this is around the clock. There's some kind of process and people in place that can look at this and oversee this. And really, we want to be a leader in this area. We leaned into cybersecurity early days. And again, we had to be proactive and act early. And this, we certainly don't want to be in a reactive state. I will touch on this briefly. MDR, as mentioned earlier, at a very high level, it's a piece of software that allows us to detect when folks click on something malicious or a malicious attempt is made to infiltrate a corporate network. This is just an example. Again, I won't go through all the steps here, but this started from someone literally clicking a link in an email. And this happened back in April. So again, it took us less than a minute to detect this. And then again, 8 minutes to isolate this person's account and all of their access, after which we were able to then restore the account and ensure that the threat actor was kicked out. So this was a legitimate attempt to infiltrate the business. And again, it was caught in seconds. So what we can all take some comfort in is that there are solutions out there that some really smart folks have developed to be able to enable us to catch these things as they happen. We have to rely on software, looking for software, right? That's the day and age that we live in. Before I turn it over to Alex, just to touch on a few data points and metrics that we found interesting to share. I did want to briefly touch on really the peace of mind that, certainly, we give ARA as well as other organizations is just ensuring that from a cyber lens that we're protecting everyone. It's our responsibility. It's our job. We also have to protect ourselves as a Canadian business. But beyond that, again, we're IT help desk. We, again, from a security lens, go as far as setting email security policies as well. Now, if you have someone on hand that manages your IT, we strongly suggest that they help set email phish filters to try to ensure that most of these malicious emails don't even make it to your inbox. There's ways to do that. And so again, it does require someone to know how to adjust these policies, but that's a great place to start as well. Something that we do. And just making sure someone's managing your firewall, someone's managing PCs, ensuring that these are updated and replaced, every 5 or so years. And then ensuring that some sort of training and education is happening on a regular basis. We even perform ethical phishing campaigns as well to try to catch folks. Again, it's not a shaming exercise. It's more so, hey, had this been a real attempt, you would have been compromised. So how do we learn from this? What do we need to do differently? So, Alex, at this stage, I'll turn it over to you here to cover this.
If you just go back, Cam, and I'll
Sure.
give you the signal to bring up I want them to be impactful. Thanks, mate. That was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, we're coming towards the end. I've got another sort of 6 or 7 minutes of chat and another couple of slides for you, because there were a few things that I did want to follow up there. I actually had the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into cyber threats for the auto retail industry in advance of this webinar. And some of the things I found were very interesting. I'm not long on giving stats in these webinars normally, because I think they normally go over people's heads and people don't actually care. But the most staggering one I did find is that cybercrime has gone up from $1 billion for the automotive industry in 2022, which sounds a lot, but it's not actually significantly, it's not actually statistically significant, to $22.5 billion in 2024. So it's underseen a 2,150% increase in 3 years. And then, of course, you don't need to be a maths major to work out that if that trend continues exponentially, then you're looking at something that represents an existential threat to the industry moving forward. So just to pick up on some of the points Cam made during his excellent presentation, just on the idea of how cybersecurity's cyber criminals target small businesses. So with my role as CRO at Dyand, I spend a lot of time chatting to potential new clients, and as Cam mentioned at the top, our core customers are really local companies in Vancouver that have sort of 10 to 50 staff. Typically, they don't have in-house IT resources. So I'm chatting to people at C-level, company owners, CFOs, COOs, and they will tell me all the time, I think we're too small to be targeted, or we wouldn't be a target for that sort of thing. So that's a misnomer, because with certain notable exceptions like a London Drugs, nobody these days is actually targeted, right? What bad actors are doing with the current cyber landscape is they're leveraging AI tools to look for low-hanging fruit. So I'm going to get in as many car analogies in today for a bit of fun. It's a bit like a car thief walking into a car parking lot, and instead of going, right, the Lamborghini in the corner looks expensive, so I'll have a go at that first. No, because of the tools in his skill set, he will already know that actually the Ford in stall number 26, the doors are left open, and the Mitsubishi in stall number 103, the window is open. So that's where he's going to start, because it's the lowest hanging fruit, and that's where he's going to get the most bang for his buck. The other major misnomer I see quite a bit out there that I think is worth flagging up: what are the actual consequences of a cyber breach? So if you ask people to say, what's the worst thing that could happen if you get hacked? They go, well, I guess I'd have to pay the ransom. No. The second thing they'd say, well, I guess they could stop me working. They could shut down all the PCs, lost productivity, lost business. Again, it would suck, but no. If you actually break down the $24 billion value of that cybercrime, $0.5 billion of that was actually ransom demands. The ransom demands typically are small because they're designed to be paid, and they're proportional to the size of the organization they've targeted. 2 billion of that 24 billion was lost productivity, downtime. 22 billion was data breach. So data breach is if you could bring up the slide now, Cam, please. So 90% of the total of cybercrime in the auto industry is data theft, right? If you look at the screen, these are all things that a lot of people in your industry have access to. They're extremely valuable to cyber criminals. They could do a lot of damage with this. A lot of retailers and suppliers have a vast repository of interconnected data that now goes down all the way to the smart and electric vehicles, extends all the way to the charging stations themselves. So this is what they actually want. And this is the reason you're seeing that exponential growth in cybercrime for the auto retail industry. So I'm just going to go through what the actual costs are associated with data leakage, just to drive home how important it is, because some of them are not obvious. If you put me in a room for 5 minutes before I did a deep dive here and said, okay, Alex, come up with all of these, I wouldn't have got all of them. So if you bring up the next slide, Cam, please. Yeah, so if your customer's data is stolen, these are all the things you're on the hook for. So investigation and forensic analysis, you're going to have to hire experts, probably the ones you didn't hire in the first place, to go and find out what happened, who got in, stole what, how did they get in. Customer notification, you're going to have to go in and notify all of your previously loyal customers that you've lost their vital data. Credit monitoring and identity theft. You may be responsible for helping your customers that got hacked. There's legal fees in litigation. We're thinking about lawsuits, class action lawsuits. There's regulatory fines. There's PIPA BC, which can charge you up to $100,000 per case. And then there's your cyber insurance. Like any bad driver that gets in an accident, if you have a cyber incident, then unfortunately your premiums are going to go up. So these are just the hard costs associated. It's mentioned nothing with the intangible costs, reputational damage, which is arguably bigger as well. I think I read a stat that said 84% of customers wouldn't buy a car from a dealership that had had a cyber breach. If you actually speak to some of the people that we deal with, where we help them with remediation, or if you get feedback from people that have experienced the cyber attack, it is a lot like being in a car accident, because it comes very fast out of the blue. One day you're driving along, everything is fine. The next minute, things are completely different. Because if you are responsible within your organization for this sort of thing, once this happens, once things are in motion, that is all you're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. The rest of your life will go on hold as you work through this very, very odious process. So I definitely think one thing that Dyand brings for our customers is peace of mind, that experts are deployed on this and we're across this, and it's a little bit like driving with a seatbelt and with the engine being fine-tuned as you drive. So that's all I had. I don't know if you wanted to do anything else, Cam, or were we going to take a couple of questions if we had time?
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I think that, I think, Dave, we do see that there might be a Q&A question there.
Yeah, certainly. What I can do, yeah. So one of the components here that relates, and thank you, gentlemen. It's been some excellent information so far. So what are the most overlooked human factors in cybersecurity? So how can organizations better address the psychological and behavioral vulnerabilities that lead to breaches beyond just technical solutions? So what can we teach our people as to how to be aware of this stuff?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave, because again, what hopefully folks are taking away from today is that people will still be the weakest link. And so education is a great place to start, awareness. And so again, just better understanding how you are managing technology today. What are you doing? What are you sharing? What are you giving access to? So again, it's that we find that education is easily the best place to start in awareness. So but
Okay, I'm going to bring Ibrahim back into the conversation as well too. And Ibrahim, I've got one question for you, and maybe you can share a little bit of our experience and history regarding phishing emails and potential threats that we've seen even at the ARA. And we have a robust system. I think we have a robust system to protect ourselves, but we still get the exposure as well.
Yeah, this is correct. As you started, Dave, the conversation, we're taking cybersecurity very seriously at the ARA. And thank you to Dyand and the team at Dyand. As Alexander mentioned, we have the peace of mind that we feel we are protected. We are taking enough measures to mitigate the risk of cybersecurity. At the ARA, one of the measures we have implemented maybe a couple of years now is a phishing campaign. And what this does, it sends fake phishing emails to the staff just to get them the experience to deal with one of those phishing emails. And these are in the back end, Dyand is watching who opened the emails, who clicked on the link, and I receive a monthly report that I share with the team about their experience with those phishing campaigns. So it's helping the team very much, and it is, I see cybersecurity is not an IT problem. It is a business everyday problem. And as you well covered, the organization face threats from phishing scams, and it's always there is a risk to cripple like operations, like expose customer data and damage reputation. And it's always starts by attacking human, and it's started by a human error and technical weaknesses at the organization. So at the ARA, what we are trying our best to do is raising the awareness among staff. And with the help of Dyand, we have been implementing a few internal policies. And also we, through this phishing campaign, we increased the employee training and practical controls, like Cam mentions, the firewalls, the endpoint protection, and the management. I have a note here, detection and response. This is a bit technical, and of course, Cam can speak like more to this. And also, we have just in case something happened, we have our cybersecurity insurance. However, to answer your question, Dave, we didn't have like a real exposure, thankfully, so far to any of these cybersecurity, because again, Dyand is keeping an eye on our system and protecting our data. And what I also want to say here is that mitigating the risk of cybersecurity is not a one-time thing. It requires constant attention, and it requires you to allocate annual budget for this. And what we're doing now with Dyand, through regular conversation, every year we try to implement something new, because of course we can't. It depends on your budget. It depends on your cost control procedures you have. You can't just like invest heavily in cybersecurity protection. So we're trying every year to allocate a little bit more to protect our system and protect our members' data. I hope I answered the question, Dave.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Ibrahim. I appreciate that. So guys, so everybody that's on the line, just to let you know that again, if you have any questions or anything, please, go ahead and use the Q&A or use the chat component. But I do have a couple of questions that, as you guys were talking, I found very interesting. One of which is, the idea of a shaming event. So if a company wanted to have you guys go and kind of test them out, even though they may not be clients of yours yet, is that a likely possibility? Could they contact you and say, hey, I'd like you to run a bit of a phishing scam on us and see how many people bite in our organization to see how much potential we have for being open? And if they do that, what sort of a cost might be attached to doing something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. And, I think that there are definitely ways that you can deploy a phishing type of campaign. For us and how we deploy ours currently for ARA and other clients is, we are in the systems, we're managing them, so that allows us to then target the users based on what we see and what we know. So based on that, for us, the service is better delivered to a client that we're managing, because we're in the system, we are managing the users and we see them, and then we can actually target them. Whereas if someone was to, go and do this on their own, they could probably find something. It would just depend on whether they want to actually spend the time to set up the campaigns. We typically have someone on our team actually craft the campaigns, and there's templates you can get. So short answer is, it's possible someone to try to attempt this on their own, but it's time and resources and knowledge and know-how. For us, we can do it. Typically, it hasn't been something that we've kind of supported as a standalone, only because it requires us to be in the systems, in the environment.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So really bottom line is, awareness. So be aware and then reinforce some good practices. Now, you also talked about cyber insurance, and that's one question I have. I've never heard of cyber insurance before, so this is kind of a new one for me. So does it cost a lot to have cyber insurance? Like how much are we talking about? How did they establish a premium for cyber insurance?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things, and most folks will just go to their existing, insurance provider And that's usually where the conversation starts. So, this is one where it is a little bit subjective. And what I mean by that is it depends on the business and
Mm-hmm.
what level of risk the insurance provider is associating with not only your industry, but also the questions that you answer. They will actually send you usually a 20 questions, sort of a questionnaire to determine what measures you have implemented and what you have not implemented. Based on that, they could either deny you cyber insurance until those things are implemented. I can tell you right off the bat, if you don't have multi-factor authentication deployed across your business, they will flat out deny you cyber insurance. There are other things in the industry, there's some chatter that other things may become mandatory. Everything else will either drive your premium up or down based on how you answer the question. This is why it's hard to pinpoint a number on this. That being said, it is still a cost that a business has to allocate. And that, what I've seen and what I've heard from others is cyber insurance can be anywhere from, 5 to 15K, sometimes more. Again, it just depends on size of the business and what the level of risk is. The last thing I'll share is, based on the measures you have implemented, your premiums could be lower and your coverage could be more, could be expanded, right? So there's benefits to actually taking security seriously, because what you pay can actually be less. You're less of a risk.
Perfect. Makes
So it's a
great
good question.
sense.
Yeah.
Now I've got one last question, and again, I open up to others because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's curious about this stuff, but you talk about passwords, and I saw in your notes there not to store them on the browser. Where is a safe place to store your passwords? I'm always
Excellent
battling with
question.
this. I'm looking at, can I hide it
Yeah.
on my phone somewhere? Is there some sort of a software I can apply on my phone to hide it? Because it's always a question of, if
Yeah.
somebody steals my laptop, are they going to be able to find this file that has my stuff? Oops, just identified. I've got a file that has my passwords in it. Right. So I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So what do you do?
Yeah, excellent question. And so, and maybe I'll answer this in two ways. One, the reason why you shouldn't store them in your browser, because we call that out, and then what you can do. So again, cyber criminals are always evolving, and the tools and approaches they use is always changing. There was a time when you could save it in your Chrome browser or what have you, but now someone can actually, without getting too technical, they can actually hijack your browsing session. And what that means, it actually gives them access to looking at things in your browser, including passwords. So this is now become a risky way to save passwords. Now, if you haven't taken any of the security measures into place, then it becomes even more riskier. All right. So again, the level of risk changes depending on what else you've done. The best place to store password, definitely not on a sticky note or under your keyboard. We've seen all sorts of things. Is actually finding a password management solution. There's a number out there. In fact, you could look it up right now and you'll probably find a dozen, all saying the same thing. Things like 1Password or Keeper, these types of solutions. And they don't cost a lot. Oftentimes they're just a couple dollars per user, per staff member. So there's a number of folks that just take this on and they go and invest in a password management solution. It's funny, I would say it's the number one requested thing for us in the last, I'd say 3 months here is folks don't want to spend the time to manage this on their own. So the good thing is we're actually exploring this as a service. We've usually left it to the businesses to manage this, but again, there's some growing concern around this. So, again, it'll be something that we'll be able to offer in the short term. But for everyone on the call today, it's a great question to ask yourselves: is where are passwords being stored today? And use a password management vault. That's
Perfect.
a fairly low cost method of securing them.
Sorry, Dave. Actually, this triggers another question. For businesses, scams that still using browser to save their passwords, like, is there some measures to even protect this, like the EDR or MDR? Does this apply to the password saved in the browsers?
Excellent question, Ibrahim. That's a fantastic question. When you have a detection and response tool like EDR and MDR that's actively looking for threats, the way to look at it is that software is hunting. It's actively hunting and looking for any kind of threats. Could be an outside threat coming in or someone actually opening a door or window by clicking on a link. The answer to your question is yes. Those tools will detect that kind of incident and breach. In fact, it'll also detect, we talked about MFA earlier, multi-factor authentication. Most people look at that and say, it's secure. There's no level of risk to that. If you went and looked this up online later, you'll find that there's videos that will show people and walk them through how to bypass something like multi-factor authentication. There's instructional videos. I don't know what the educational use case for that is, because we look at that as a breach, a way to bypass a security measure. But to answer your question, the power of a monitoring tool is that it can detect even someone trying to bypass multi-factor authentication, which again, most of us will look at and say, that's a secure way for me to validate and verify my identity. So again, just this landscape gets more and more sophisticated as the years go by, as we can all tell and see. But great
It's the
question.
lovely environment we all live in, because you can go online and buy a Slim Jim. What's the Slim Jim for? Well, it's to break into vehicles.
Yeah.
So you got to wonder about that stuff, and the type of security that's out there. So if you invent it, somebody's looking for a way to how to circumvent it, obviously. So that's why this is a continuous, ongoing process. So Cam and Alex, really want to appreciate and thank you guys for this information. It was very informative. Always a good testament to how good the information is that the number of participants doesn't decline. So we haven't had a whole bunch of people signing off going, okay, this is all stuff I've known. Everybody stayed on. So obviously they found it very informative, and I look forward to being able to post this online for everybody. And I'm thinking this might actually even form a good article for us in our upcoming publication to talk a little bit about cybersecurity as well. So again, Dyand is a system that we at the ARA are currently using, and they are our preferred supplier when it comes to this for members of the ARA. So if it's something that is of interest to you, and I can't see how it would not be after today's discussion, certainly encourage you to reach out to them and see how they can provide some support to you guys. Thank you. They've put their information contact up on the screen for you now. And unless there's any last second questions from anybody, and it appears not.
Maybe Dave, I'll quickly share, because I know folks were probably anxiously waiting for a name to be drawn. So I would like to call that out before everyone hops off. And before I say that, actually, huge credit to, I just want to also recognize, for everyone on the call, just from the questions that you've seen Dave and Ibrahim ask, full credit to them and the ARA team, because again, the level of knowledge and just even the type of questions that are being asked, and I can attest to this, these are not questions that were prepped in advance. So again, that's why I want to give that shout out and give them both credit that, even just, again, their level of knowledge, or even just the way that they're thinking about cybersecurity has changed. So, again, credit to you both, right, for, again, just that increased awareness. And it certainly adds to the conversation today for everybody else listening. With that said, there's an interesting way that we're drawing out a name. I've taken everyone's, I've kind of just put this into Copilot here and said, draw a random person. So I'm trying to keep this as random as possible. So it has selected Monique Simone. So Monique, if you are on the call and listening, please take note of Alex's information here. I'm sure we can also have Dave and Ibrahim connect us with you for winning our grand prize draw. It's, again, this day and age, we'll avoid the Amazon gift cards, and I don't think you could deny cold hard cash. But again, thank you to everyone for taking the time today. We hope you learned something. We hope this encourages dialogue internally. If you feel like there's any kind of value in a conversation, we're here. We're happy to connect. But again, hopefully you found this valuable today. And thank you, Dave and Ibrahim.
Excellent. All right, everyone, enjoy the balance of your day. And again, thank you for taking the time to sit through our webinar. And we hope, again, you found this very valuable. I think we have from our perspective, and we use Dyand. So there you are. Okay, everyone, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Everyone.
Many thanks.
Appreciate it.